Grenada insisted that the new airport would benefit the expansion of tourism to the Caribbean island. But to the United States, that country was building a military base for the Cubans and the Russians. Superpower interventions in the Caribbean region have been going on for decades, and Michael Manley was lucky that he got away with his life. The same cannot be said for Grenada's Prime Minister Maurice Bishop. Bishop was a London-educated lawyer who took power during a revolutionary coup in 1979. By the time he had seized power, Bishop had gained immense popularity as the leader of the New Jewel movement, which espoused the ideology of Black power, African socialism, and grassroots democracy. Now, at first, the United States was not too bothered by Maurice Bishop. They described Grenada as a tropical slum with only 110,000 people, and the main exports at that time were banana and cocoa, and they didn't really see them as a threat. So Bishop started on his agenda to reshape the capitalist investment structure into a more socialist, nationalist structure. Within the first 18 months, many rural communities had water and electricity for the very first time. Unemployment dropped from 49% to 14%. Thousands benefited from low-cost housing. Free health care was introduced, and school fees were abolished. Many local citizens formed associations to assist the government in carrying out its agenda. There were volunteers that taught people how to read and write, and many people volunteered to work on the infrastructure projects to build roads and bridges in different communities. Even the World Bank praised the Grenadian government's sound fiscal management. Bishop's long-term vision for Grenada's economic independence was the construction of a major international airport. And for this project, he elicited the assistance of the Cuban government. In fact, Cuba did send hundreds of its citizens to provide the labor for many of these infrastructure projects, including the airport project. To no one's surprise, this greatly alarmed the Reagan administration. Grenada insisted that the new airport would benefit the expansion of tourism to the Caribbean island. But to the United States, that country was building a military base for the Cubans and the Russians. The US even claimed that they had found documents that proved that the Cubans were trying to institute a government outpost in Grenada, a statement which the then CIA director had to retract as false. It wasn't only the United States that was giving Grenada the side eye. It's reported that countries like Barbados, Dominica, and unsurprisingly, Jamaica, were looking at the Grenadian model and thinking that maybe we better put a stopping to this in case our citizens seeing all these people getting these nice things and want it for themselves. By late 1983, a power struggle within the New Jewel movement saw Maurice Bishop being placed under house arrest. But Bishop still enjoyed massive support among the people, so workers went on strike and there were large protests for him to be freed. But when he emerged from house arrest to join his supporters, he was captured by armed guards. And whoever gave the order or who exactly led the movement to his assassination is still unclear, but it's said that he and 7 others were lined up against a wall and shot by a firing squad. Their bodies were so mangled by these shots that they were then the pieces were wrapped in blankets and taken to a pit where they were burned. In the days that followed, the US used the pretext of Bishop's murder to invade Grenada. They said that they needed to rescue American students who were studying on the island. But their own documents showed that this invasion had been in the works for months before. Historians believe that Reagan used the invasion of Grenada to boost military morale after the humiliation of Vietnam and because the country was also losing the war in Lebanon. According to Blum's book, one of the fundamental falsehoods concerning the invasion of Tuesday, the 25th of October 1983, was that the United States had been requested to intervene by an urgent plea on the 21st from the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, comprising 6 countries, and joined in this instance by Barbados and Jamaica. Barbados' Prime Minister Tom Adams and Jamaica's Prime Minister Edward Seaga would later say that in fact they had been approached by the United States to issue an urgent plea for help, to which the United States would then have to respond. The U.S. also claimed to have received a letter from Grenada's Governor General Paul Scoon requesting their immediate intervention. It was later discovered that that letter had been written in Washington, backdated, and sent to Scoon for his signature. Claims that American students who were studying in Grenada needed to be rescued were also later debunked, as it later came out that those students had been offered the chance to leave the country before the invasion, and they had refused those offers, saying that they were fine and they wanted to continue their studies. As to the invasion itself, more than 7,000 U.S. troops landed on the ground in Grenada, and they began an intense propaganda campaign trying to convince the people of the evils of Maurice Bishop. But they were surprised to learn that Bishop was still immensely popular among his people. So what did they do? They changed the message to say that it was the Cubans who had killed their beloved Maurice Bishop. By the end of 1984, Herbert Blaise was elected as Prime Minister of Grenada in an election that was said to be heavily influenced by the United States. In the years that followed, Grenada saw an erosion in civil and human rights as a U.S.-trained police force embarked on a campaign of brutality, abuse of power, and arbitrary arrest. Books on Black power and Black solidarity were banned, including books on Nelson Mandela.